Happy November, everybody. I've got a subject on my mind today that I haven't really talked about in way too long. Most people that know me a long time know that I started this company as a Hispanic bank, El Banco de Nuestra Comunidad. And no, I don't speak Spanish. But we had 12 branches in Atlanta, and at the core of what we did to serve the Hispanic immigrants, before that became a bad word for some reason in this country, um, we cashed checks because that's how this immigrant came in to start their financial cycle, paying bills, sending money home to families, etc. And I can't tell you today that's still a big part of our business, only we don't do it at brick and mortar, but we power mobile apps all across the nation. We're in PayPal and Venmo and Green Dot and NetSpend and ADP and the Money Network, and the list goes on and on. And I get asked why, right? And it's so confusing to everybody because they think we're in the remote deposit capture business, and we're not in the remote deposit capture business. In fact, most people don't understand what a deposit is, especially if you're one of these consumers in America that are struggling, that are living paycheck to paycheck. And by the way, everybody, this is like almost 60% of our population. So this is not just poor people, if you want to look at it that way, or just immigrants, or just anything, right? It's America. It's Main Street America, and it's hard, especially in today's inflationary environment, for people to get by. Every time I go eat with my wife and kids and or grandbaby, and it costs $50 or $60, and I say to myself, how does somebody earning $15 an hour or $18 an hour even pay for this meal at Chick-fil-A? We're not even talking about somewhere fancy here. So it sort of gets back to what is check cashing and what's the difference between a deposit and check cashing, which is what I really wanted to hit on today. Everybody that has a bank account in this country is in that category where they also might cash checks, because if they have a bank account, they entered into an agreement with that bank where people don't read those terms and conditions, but where the consumer is actually guaranteeing the bank that if they take a picture of a check on a phone and deposit it with their bank, they're guaranteeing the bank that those funds are good. Which is why even after the bank has given you credit in your account for that check, they can come back the next day or a week later or 2 weeks later and reverse that transaction if that check doesn't clear, if that check bounces. And this is sort of at the core of what we used to call good funds. It's a good funds problem. So the check cashing consumer that we serve all over this nation today through our partners, which I mentioned, they're just doing a smarter transaction. If they've been burned by somebody that wrote a check to them, they realized, you know what, I can go pay a fee and cash that check. And yes, people are still getting checks to the tune of 9 billion of them a year, I think, still in this country. And if I go cash that check, then somebody else owns that risk, and I actually have good funds. And that may be worth it to me, and actually a wise financial decision, versus making a supposed free deposit that could end in multiple overdrafts with overdraft fees that rack up in a hurry at the bank and dwarf what they would have paid to cash that check. So this is on my mind because I think Americans are struggling right now. I think we're headed into a recession, and I think that because over the last 24 years when we've been doing this service, every time we are coming up on a recession, the volume of consumers that are lining up to pay for that risk transference to cash their check, it spikes. And we have been in a spike since February of this year. So based on our data, the recession is coming and consumers are struggling. And this is a vital part of America that needs access to good funds, not provisional funds, but good funds from their check. And so we're built in so many places, so many apps across America. I think if you Google, how do I cash my check on a mobile device, 19 or 20 apps come up, and they're pretty much all Ingo, because we started that a long time ago, and it's still growing, and it's still a really important part of what we do, because it's still a really important part for this consumer, this 60% of America that's struggling paycheck to paycheck, and for the partners we serve, like PayPal and Venmo and Green Dot and NetSpend and others, that are serving this consumer and trying to meet their needs. So don't write off check cashing just yet, guys. And don't misunderstand what it really is. It's not a foolish transaction if you live in that cycle. It's part of this transactional payroll that we've been talking about recently with Karen and payments. It's just it happens every day, and it has been happening for generations, and it's still alive and well, and it's still important, and it's still something that Ingo does and that Ingo is proud of.